Hopefully you're watching this before anything goes wrong with your hardwood contractor. In this video, I'm going to explain the most common problems between wood floor contractors and customers and how to prevent them. And I'm going to explain it in a super short story. You're having a house built, so you hire a bunch of subs, but we are just going to talk about the plumber and the hardwood guy. You hire Bob the plumber. Bob puts the pipes in the wall, installs the sinks, installs the toilets. They're straight, they don't leak. It passes inspection, and you happily cut Bob a check and send him on his way. You then hire Tom to do your hardwood floors. Tom installs the floors, sands them, stains them, finishes them, and then he shows up for his check. There's no inspector to take a look at the floors and say, these are good, these are up to code. So this job falls to you. So you get out your magnifying glass, your knee pads, your sticky notes, and the brightest spotlight you could find at Bass Pro. Then you proceed to comb every inch of the floor on your hands and knees to ensure it's finished as nicely as the Steinway piano in your living room. Anywhere that it falls short of your expectations, you leave a sticky note for Tom the hardwood guy. This is actually a scene out of one of Tom's darkest nightmares. You see, the problem here is that you don't know what to expect when getting your hardwoods installed and finished, so it simply falls to your level of attention to detail. With Bob the plumber, the list of things you could inspect was pretty short, and after all, most of his work was concealed in the walls. The building inspector was going to make sure it was up to code anyways. You just had to make sure he didn't mess anything up while doing it. It's not crooked, it doesn't leak. Bang, he's done. With Tom the hardwood guy, the building inspector wasn't there to have your back, so you've got to make sure they're good. And every last bit of Tom's work is visible to you to inspect. And the list of things you could inspect is endless. Was the finish as smooth as that Steinway piano of yours? Was there dust left on anything? Was any trim or drywall damaged? Was the stain perfectly even? Was there any boards on the floor that you didn't like? Were there any gaps? Did any dust blow out of your vents and into the wet finish? Were there any nail holes? Is everything perfectly straight? Did the stain color come out exactly as you expected? You get the idea. Essentially, does the work fit the image that you had in your mind at the start of the project? The problem is that if you haven't been through the process a few times, you don't have any perspective. And that's where Tom should have set your expectations at the beginning. He does this every day. He knows how it will look. He knows the things that might bother you, and he needs to set your expectations before it all begins. Now, he may not have done a very good job of that, but you can take it upon yourself to ask the right questions if he doesn't tell you. I usually find that customers are upset not because the work of the hardwood company is bad, but because they didn't inform you what to expect ahead of time. First, we need to establish what level of detail a wood floor should be completed to. To do this, we'll look at a scale of different levels of wood finish work. At the lowest end of the scale, we have an exterior wooden fence. It's fairly rough, but it's had an exterior finish sprayed or brushed over it. Next, we have an exterior deck, which has been sanded smooth. It's a bit smoother and more detailed than the fence, but it wouldn't pass on your hardwoods. Then we have your hardwood floor. It's very smooth, but at the end of the day, you walk on it, and so do your dogs and kids, and you never inspect it from closer than about 5 feet away, which is the height of your eyes standing up. Maybe lower for some people. Next, we have stained and finished stair railing and newel posts. You run your hand over these, and you see it from about 2 feet away or less. Then we have finished cabinetry and furniture. It is meant to be touched by the hand and viewed from a foot away or less. Finally, we have a Steinway grand piano. You could hardly find an imperfection in this with a magnifying glass. This gives you some perspective on how wood finish work should be judged. Wood floors are meant to be judged from standing up in natural light. If you need special lighting, special angles, or to get down low to see it, you are expecting too high of a level of detail in the work. So let's just go down a list of the common issues we see between hardwood companies and homeowners and talk about what is reasonable and what is not. Keep in mind, I've been a hardwood flooring company owner for a long time, so I'm a little biased. 1. Stain or finish work visual defects. So, uneven stain, puddles of finish. You really shouldn't be able to see any of this from standing up. If you can, your contractor should probably fix it. 2. Smoothness of finish work. Remember, your hardwood floors are to be smoother than the deck, but they don't need to be as smooth as the stair railing. They aren't meant to be touched by the hand. The feel of them should be judged through socks. It's virtually impossible to keep every last little bit of dust out of the floor. This is because things float in the air and they land in the wet finish. To get the level of detail that a piano has, they have perfectly sealed spray booths where the air is perfectly clean, there's nothing floating around. You don't have that in your house. It'll definitely help to clean up the dust as much as possible off adjacent surfaces, and your contractor will probably do this, but even then, it's not going to make it perfect. And you may be thinking, let's just turn off the heat or the air conditioning to stop the airflow. If it's the right time of year, you might be able to get away with this, but finishes need specific temperatures and proper airflow to carry away the drying agents. If there's a little bit of dust or debris in your finish, but you can't see it from standing up in natural light, and it's not catching on your socks severely, it should be left as is. 3. Stain color expectations. When you get your floor stained, it's usually best practice to see the stain sampled to a small area of your floor before pulling the trigger on that. Not all companies do this, nor do they have to if it's not part of their system, but I would recommend asking for it if they don't offer. Keep in mind, even a small sample can be deceiving. When you have an entire floor done, it totally warps your perspective. You don't have the unsanded areas to compare it to, and it absorbs more or less light. Just a few side notes. If you have red oak, we commonly get asked to get rid of the red in the oak. And just so you know, pretty much everything you do to it will still show some reddish tones. Even more so with exotic redwoods like Brazilian cherry. No matter what you do to those exotic reds, it will be red. If you don't want it to be red, go get a big dumpster and start ripping it out. 4. Wood matching for patches and additions. If you're matching an old floor with new wood, understand that the old floor is usually from an old growth forest, so that will mean the grain patterns will be different. As the wood ages, it also darkens over time. So even if your contractor gets the perfect grade and species match, it will not look exactly the same. If you want to hide this, stain your floor a mid to dark color. If it's just a patch in an old wood floor and you want to keep the floors light, you can try asking them to stain the patchwork to make it darker like the wood. This is a real pain in the butt to try to do, and sometimes doesn't turn out that much better. They may say no to you. If they say yes, expect to pay extra for the time it takes them. If you're wanting to match a stain color that's on your trim or maybe on your existing hardwood floor, but you don't know what stain was used or what process the other floor was finished with, you can ask for this, but just know they probably won't be able to get it exact. We do custom mix stains for customers when need be, but it is an additional cost. It takes a lot of time, and we always warn them ahead of time. We're gonna get it close, but we can't promise it's gonna be exact. If you're trying to match real hardwoods to LVP or some other type of factory finished flooring, just understand that factory finishing methods are nothing like what we do on site, and it's not gonna look the same no matter what. End of story. 5. Durability of finishes. You're investing big money into your floors, and you want them to last forever. I get it. You can make them last 20 plus years before needing a refinish, but it's gonna fall more on you than on the workmanship. If you hire a reputable company, they will put down the proper amount of finish in the correct manner. If you're using a water-based finish, you can ask them for a 2-part catalyzed commercial grade finish. That will wear a bit better. It's worth the investment. If they didn't quote it, expect to pay between 75 cents to $1.25 more per square foot. If you're getting an oil-based finish, that's okay too. They don't generally come in 2-component, but they hold up well. 6. Damage to base moldings and drywall. When you have a floor installed, you need to expect some minor damage to your drywall. Your contractor should remove your baseboards and install underneath them. This process requires prying it off the wall ahead of time and then reinstalling it and caulking the top bead. In the process, they are going to be swinging mallets and prying within inches of your finished drywall. Expect some minor scuffing and damage. In new construction, we do the flooring before the final painting. I would recommend anyone having new hardwood floors installed plan to paint your walls afterwards. If you're just refinishing, there's the question of your base moldings. Some companies are going to tell you that your shoe molding and your baseboards need to come off. We generally just recommend that the shoe comes off and gets replaced. I'm about to say something that's going to make a lot of contractors mad, but it's true. You don't have to take anything off if it's not within your budget. If you do decide to take the baseboards off, there will probably be some drywall damage as well as some cracked base. Then they will need to be caulked back on, and you will probably have to repaint both the walls and the baseboard. If you leave your baseboards on, expect some scuffing from the edge sanders and some stain residues. Your contractor is going to try to keep them off as much as possible, but even if he tapes, it's probably going to bleed a little bit under the tape. It's much easier to just repaint your baseboards than to repaint the baseboards and the wall. 7. Gaps in wood filler. If you've got an old floor, it's probably full of gaps. That's pretty normal. Wood shrinks in the dry season and expands in the wet. In Michigan, we see a lot of this. The floor is always moving a little bit. So if you try to fill those gaps with the hard, brittle wood filler, which almost all fit that category, it's going to move and pop back out over time. We recommend leaving the gaps alone. Don't fill them. It's a bad long-term decision. If it's a new floor, it should already be virtually gap-free, and a little bit of wood filler is acceptable. You need to agree with your contractor on the amount of filling that's going to happen ahead of time, though. 8. Deep gouges and scratches prior to starting. When doing old refinishes, a lot of times they've been carpeted at one point. There's often deep scratching and gouges in the floor, whether that be from furniture or carpet knife marks, but a lot of times it's too deep to sand out. That means you're left with two options. One, pay extra to have those boards replaced, or live with it. They should talk to you about scratches that are too deep to sand out before they move on to the finishing stages of the project, but if they haven't brought it up, you should probably be prepared to ask before it's too late. 9. Variation in wood grain. Trees have a lot of variation in them. Some boards are light, others dark, and depending on what part of the country they're from, even the same species will look different on the inside. If you're just getting a refinish, you can never reasonably complain to a contractor about how a board looks in an existing floor. On a new install, the story is slightly different. It depends on the grade of flooring you're having installed. Number 2, character, has tons of variation, lots of knots, and short links. Number 1 has some character, some knots, and it gets a little bit longer. Select has no knots, fairly minimal variation, and links should be getting significantly longer. Clear grade, no knots, very little variation, long links. If you're getting a 1 or a 2 grade floor, you should really never complain about a funky board, a dark board, etc. in your floor. If you're getting a select grade floor, you can start to be a little picky over this. If you really don't want any funky or dark boards that don't match in your floor, get a clear grade floor. 10. Dust. Most contractors run the dustless system. So do we. This means they are hooked up to a powerful vacuum that picks up most of the dust. They probably get 99.9% of the dust. But a mid-sized refinish might make 150 to 200 gallons of dust. So even a tiny fraction of that is enough to leave a light layer of dust around your house. Good contractors will usually clean up the bulk of it, but be prepared to do some cleaning to get rid of anything that's left. That covers the main points of contention that we see. The best thing that you can do is hire a reputable contractor that has lots of good reviews and photos of past work online. If you have done this, don't be Sherlock Holmes, always trying to investigate them. Build a relationship with them. Make them want to give you a nice floor because they like you. You will always be better off to treat them with respect and kindness in the long term. If you think you know better because you have read something online, I would recommend tiptoeing into this and being very humble if you dare to bring up some online knowledge you have. That's one of the fastest ways to offend a contractor and make them not like you. Lots of online blogs and websites are written by people without real-world experience. Lastly, you will get what you pay for. If you hire the cheapest company, don't expect the best job or the best customer service. If your contractor wants to pull the wool over your eyes, they can. The wood flooring community has a lot of trade secrets that you will never find out just reading online. If you know you're a picky person, don't try to hide that in the beginning. Just be open about it. Say, listen, I'm a fairly picky person. I really like my things to be nice, but I'm not going to be rude about it. They know what they're dealing with now. They may charge you a little extra because they need a budget for your complaints, but you will be way better off in the end having been transparent. Lastly, I want to caution you on withholding payment or threatening legal action if things go south. Contractors can lien your house if you withhold payment, and then you will be forced to go through the legal system to get it removed. Regardless of who is right, This will cost you thousands to tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. I would first make a significant effort to sit down and work out the problem face to face before you go there. They probably have been threatened with legal action and attorneys before. This won't be their first go around. It's just a part of being in business, even for the best companies. There's a good chance that they have corporate counsel on retainer, and if it's your first time trying to take someone to court, there may be a lot of unpleasant surprises involved. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, I think you would also like the one right up here.